everyone, welcome back to my class. This is Rumana Ali. I hope you all are doing well. In the last session we have discussed about the pulmonary volumes and pulmonary capacities. Now in today's class, let us see how can we measure these pulmonary volumes and capacities of our lungs. So we have discussed about 4 different volumes, and there were tidal volume, inspiratory reserve volume, expiratory reserve volume and residual volume, right? So here we are using a process to measure the pulmonary capacities, and that process is called as spirometry, which can be done by using a device called spirometer. So in this way, a chamber needs to be attached to the spirometer, and a chamber should be provided in which the air is filled. Now ask any person to blow the air. So when the person blows the air rises up, and when it takes up the air gets the level of the air gets decreases. So in such a way, whenever a person inspired the air, at the time this type of line can be seen on the screen when the inspiration takes place. So whenever the air is taken up by a person, this type of line can be seen on the screen. Now when the person exhales the air, at that time the level of the air rises up, right? So here you can see this type of line. It can be marked downwards as the air. So whenever a person performs expiration, that means when he exhales the air, at that time this graph can be marked in this way towards the downside. Then again the person takes the air in, it rises up. Then again when the person exhales the air, it moves down. The graph of a normal expiration and inspiration can be seen. So this is the volume of air that is taken up by the person during normal inspiration and expiration. That volume is tidal volume. We already learned about these volumes, right? So tidal volume can be measured in this way. But if a person inhales the air, once it inhales the air, after inhaling the tidal volume of air, when the person continues the inspiration process, additional amount of air is taken up by the person, then this type of rise can be seen in this way. So this is the tidal volume. Besides the tidal volume, if a person takes the additional amount of air during inspiration, then this forceful inspiration is regarded as a volume EIRC, inspiratory reserve IRV, inspiratory reserve volume. So tidal volume plus inspiratory reserve volume gives you inspiratory capacity of a person. So we can know the inspiratory capacity of a person by combining inspiratory reserve volume and the tidal volume. Tidal volume is the volume of air that we take in and gives out during normal inspiration and expiration respectively, right? Next thing is, when a person takes additional amount of air after a normal inspiration, then it shows this type of rise. Now again, a normal inspiration is carried out by a person. Now a normal expiration. After a normal expiration, when a person tries to remove additional air after a normal expiration, then here in this way the graph will come. It moves downwards. So this is how, once the tidal volume is expired, after a tidal volume of air is expired, it is given out, some more amount of air is given out by a person, and it is done by the forceful expiration. So after the forceful expiration, whatever the air that comes out, it can be termed as ERV, expiratory reserve volume. When we add up tidal volume, that means the volume of air during expiration, and ERV, the volume of air that is given out in an additional amount. So when we combine this TV, tidal volume and expiratory reserve volume, then we can measure the expiratory capacity of a person. In this way, the capacities can be measured by blowing air and taking air. Whenever a normal inspiration occurs, it shows this type of the movement of a graph towards upper side. whenever the expiration takes place, when we breathe out the air, at the time the graph moves downwards, and this is the tidal volume, right? This is how we can measure tidal volume, inspiratory capacity and expiratory capacities of the different persons. So, in the last session we have already discussed about all these capacities, right? So, this is our lung. In a lung, some amount of air is present, which is a fixed amount of air. Out of that fixed amount of air, we can exhale this much of air we can exhale out by the forceful expiration, but the rest of the air that never be removed from our lung, it is given as residual volume. So, how can we measure this residual volume? We can measure tidal volume, we can measure inspiratory reserve volume or inspiratory capacity, and also we can measure expiratory capacity by using a method, spirometry. What about residual volume, which is a fixed amount of air that is always there in our lungs? So, this residual volume can never be measured. It cannot be measured by any method. Only the capacities like inspiratory capacity and expiratory capacity can be measured by a method called spirometry. Let us now discuss about the topic regulation of breathing. We have discussed the different respiratory organs. We have learned about the different contractions and relaxation of muscles due to which the breathing can be done. We have seen that the muscle contraction takes place due to the contraction of two muscles. Inspiration can be achieved by a person. The air can enter into the lungs due to the contraction of diaphragm and the intercostal muscles of our ribs. So, who is responsible to make that muscles contract? How this contraction can be possible? It is due to the signals that are sent by our brain. So, firstly we need to see the different parts of our brain, then we can understand the mechanism by which the breathing can be regulated, right? Whenever we talk about the structure of a brain, we need to remember three parts of our brain, and they are forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. This part is called as forebrain. Forebrain shows two main parts in it. One is cerebrum and the other part is diencephalon. Midbrain is the middle portion of the brain, and when you see this kind of structure, then this whole part of a brain can be termed as hindbrain. In the hindbrain you can see three parts, and that parts are cerebellum, pons and medulla. These three parts are present in our hindbrain. So, this is about the structure of a brain. Now, which part is responsible in regulating the breathing process? So, forebrain shows diencephalon and cerebrum. Both the parts are not involved in carrying out the process of respiration. Midbrain is also not involved in the process of respiration, but hindbrain plays a major role in the process of respiration. So, let us see what is the role that is played by the different parts of our hindbrain. So, in the hindbrain we know that three different parts are present: cerebellum, pons and medulla oblongata. In the medulla oblongata, some nerves are present. In the brain, many nerve cells are present. Nerve cells are the functional unit of our central nervous system, right? So, many neurons. Neurons are nothing but nerve cells, the cells which are present in the brain. They are our neurons, or we can say them as nerve cells. So, the main nerve cells or the neurons are present in the medulla oblongata, and these neurons are sending the signals. They can send the signals to the ribs, to the intercostal muscles of our ribs, and also to the diaphragm. So, whenever they send the signals, at that time the contraction of intercostal muscles and the contraction of diaphragm is possible, and when the diaphragm and intercostal muscles of our ribs contract, at that time we can take the oxygen in. That means the inspiration or inhalation process can be done by the contraction of intercostal muscles and diaphragm, and this contraction is possible only when the signal is sent by the medulla oblongata of our brain. So, in the medulla oblongata, some chemoreceptors are also found. Their role we are going to discuss in a minute. So, along with the chemoreceptors, some neurons are present. They send the signals to the intercostal muscles and also to the diaphragm to get contracted. Due to this contraction, inspiration can be done. So here in the medulla oblongata of our brain, a center is present. We call this center as RRC, respiratory rhythmic center. In this center only the neurons are present which are responsible to make the muscles contracted. So this center is called as respiratory rhythmic center, which is present in our medulla oblongata of our brain. Now the pons is also present. It is also a part of hindbrain. So how it is helping in the process of respiration? Let us see. In the pons, two centers are present in which different nerve cells will be there. The two centers that are found in the pons, they are, one is pneumotoxic center and the other one is apneustic center. Just before I told you that respiratory rhythmic center helps in sending the signals to the different muscles for contraction. Respiratory rhythmic center cannot work on their own. It cannot send the signals by their own. It also needs some stimulation. So the respiratory rhythmic center gets stimulated by these two centers that are present in our pons, and that two centers are pneumotoxic center and apneustic center. Pneumotoxic center means it contains some nerve cells that send signals to the respiratory rhythmic center, cannot control its work. The neurons that are present in the respiratory rhythmic center, they don't know when they have to send the signals, when they doesn't. So this respiratory rhythmic center is under the control of pneumotoxic center and apneustic center. Pneumotoxic center contains some neurons which stimulates the neurons of the respiratory rhythmic center to send the signals. So apneustic center contains some neurons, nerve cells in them. That apneustic center stimulates the respiratory rhythmic center to stop sending the signals. When the respiratory rhythmic center stop sending the signals, at that time the intercostal muscles and the diaphragm start relaxing. When the signals are sent, at that time they contract, but when the signals are removed, at that time they relaxed, and relaxation of muscles means expiration can be done. Whatever the air that is present into the lungs, it can be removed out of our body, right? So apneustic center send inhibitory signals to the respiratory rhythmic center. Inhibitory signals means it informs the respiratory rhythmic center to stop sending the signals to the ribs and also to the diaphragm, so that the lungs get relaxed and expiration can be done. But pneumotoxic center is a center which stimulates the respiratory rhythmic center to send the signals and stimulates this RRC for positive signals, so that the contraction of both these muscles can be seen, and due to this contraction, inspiration can be done. This is how the breathing is regulated by the different signals that are sent and that are stopped by our brain. Here let us see the different centers once again for a better understanding. One center is present in the medulla of our brain, and that center is respiratory rhythm center. Respiratory rhythmic center doesn't know when to send and when to stop the signals in order to carry out the process of breathing. So for guiding purpose, for the guidance of respiratory rhythmic center, there are two more centers that are present in our brain in the region called pons. So in the pon of our brain, pneumotoxic center and apneustic centers are found. Pneumotoxic center send inhibitory signals to this respiratory rhythmic center. That means it commands the respiratory rhythmic center to stop sending the signals for the contraction of muscles. And as soon as the signals are stopped, diaphragm and external intercostal muscles stop contracting and exhalation process can be done. But when the apneustic center becomes active, it sends positive signals to the respiratory rhythmic center. When it receives positive signals from the apneustic center, it sends the signals to the diaphragm and external intercostal muscles of our ribs to get contracted. This is how the contraction of diaphragm and intercostal muscles takes place due to the signals sent by respiratory rhythmic center. So, as soon as the contraction carries out, we can take the oxygen in. That means inspiration can be done, and these signals can be sent by the respiratory rhythmic center to the lungs within 2 seconds. So, within 2 seconds the signals are sent to the lungs and the contraction takes place. When the contraction has to stop at that time, it takes only 3 seconds. So, 2 seconds for the process of inspiration and 3 seconds for the process of exhalation. Inhibitory signals can be sent within 3 seconds, and the signals from the respiratory rhythmic center to the diaphragm and intercostal muscles can be sent within 2 seconds. So, you need to remember this time period, it is an important one. I hope it is clear to you. Now, regulation of breathing can be done by 2 ways, that is by neural and also through chemicals. How the regulation of breathing can be done by the neural way? That means by the involvement of brain. We have studied it just before, and in that we have seen that respiratory rhythm center is present, which is regulated by 2 more centers, that are pneumotoxic center and apneustic center. Both these centers stimulate, both these centers controls the respiratory rhythm center to send and to stop the signals for inspiration and also for expiration, right? So, this is about neural method, neural regulation of breathing. While explaining about the structure of a brain, I told you that along with the respiratory rhythmic center, chemoreceptors are also present in the medulla. That chemoreceptors can also be termed as chemosensitive area. These chemosensitive area is not only found in our brain, it is also present somewhere else in our body. When we talk about the chemical regulation of breathing, then it involves the role of chemoreceptors. That means it involves the role, the function of chemosensitive area. We'll take an example here. If we do a lot of exercise, then at that time in the blood the partial pressure of carbon dioxide, the concentration of carbon dioxide gets increases, as well as the hydrogen positive ions also gets increases. Due to the increase in the concentration of carbon dioxide and H positive ions, these chemoreceptors would become active. They can sense the increase in the concentration of carbon dioxide and H positive ions. But the other factor, like the decrease in the oxygen, would not affect the chemoreceptors. They cannot sense the factor decrease in the oxygen. Only they can sense increase in the concentration of carbon dioxide and H positive ions. As soon as the concentration of carbon dioxide and H positive ions gets increases in our blood, they start sensing them and they send the signals. They help in reducing the concentration of carbon dioxide through expiration. So, when we do exercise, the expiratory rate gets increases. We remove a lot of carbon dioxide from our body, and in turn we also need a lot of oxygen that needs to be taken up by our body. So, at that time chemoreceptors, they are sensitive for the increase in the concentration of carbon dioxide and H positive ions. Based on their presence, chemoreceptors are divided into 2 main types: central chemoreceptors and peripheral chemoreceptors. Central chemoreceptors means the chemoreceptors or the chemosensitive area which is found in the medulla of our brain. That is termed as central chemoreceptors. Now, when you look at the structure of a heart, right chamber and the left chamber is present. In the left chamber of a heart, a big artery is present, and the artery's name is aorta. Aorta is the biggest artery. Besides this, one more artery is found, and the name of that artery is carotid artery. In both these arteries, some chemoreceptors are present. Again, some chemicals are present which are sensitive to which are sensitive to increase in the partial pressure of carbon dioxide and H positive ions. So, these chemoreceptors are found in aorta as well as in carotid artery. So, this forms the peripheral chemoreceptors. So, we call these receptors as aortic bodies and carotid bodies. These bodies are found in the different arteries of our heart, and they form the peripheral chemoreceptors. So, the central chemoreceptors which are present in the medulla, they and the chemoreceptors which are present in the carotid artery as well as in aorta, these chemoreceptors, they can sense the increase in carbon dioxide and increase in hydrogen ion concentration and can stimulate the brain can stimulate our body to remove this carbon dioxide, and hence the process called exhalation can be done. This is how the neural and the chemical regulation of breathing can be seen in the human body. One topic is left in this chapter, that is disorders of our respiratory system, that we are going to learn in our next session. Till then, goodbye.